I'm the Thank you. So I'm James Head. I'm the former president and CEO at the East Bay Community Foundation and a longtime friend and supporter of the New Breath Foundation. I wanted to give just a quick frame for this event. Back in 2020, 2021, Eddie Zhang and Eddie, as you'll hear from later, the president and founder of the New Breath Foundation, we put together a joint letter when there was a rise of activities and publications happening here in the Bay Area around attacks on AAPI individuals, families, and communities. At the time, Eddie and I thought that one of the main issues related to that, as it was portrayed by the media, was that there were significant tensions between the Black community and the AAPI community. And while we found that to be true and felt that was one of the things that we collectively wanted to work on, we also found out that there was incredible work being done by AAPI organizations to support the victims and also to do policy and advocacy work to uplift and identify the resources that were needed and necessary for families and individuals in the AAPI community to thrive and to be successful. It was out of that conversation that Eddie had the brainchild of creating the We Got Us Fund, which was, from his vantage point, an opportunity to raise $10 million as a goal to support these important organizations who were doing this critical work in the community. So today we're celebrating the 1 year anniversary of the launch of the We Got Us Fund. And as of the first year, the New Breath Foundation has raised 3.5 of the 10 million goal. And we're here to share with you how that goal has been raised and some of the incredible work that's being done, as well as some of the incredible partners who have been part of this effort, and to also recommit ourselves to supporting this important initiative. With that, I'd like to introduce Eddie, who will start us off in terms of the agenda and the work of the New Breath Foundation. So Eddie.
Thank you, James. Happy New Breath, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us at this fund briefing. I'm very grateful to have James always as a mentor and as a partner in this work. And so today we just, have a very quick 1 hour engagement. And I know it can go very long or very short. I think the main thing is that we are grateful to have all of you to take some time out of your day, to share this space with us. And so as you can see, the agenda is going to be, introduction, New Breath's journey, and then sharing from some of our funding partners, our grantees, and there's a little Q&A with James and I, and then we'll do a closing, and you'll see the agenda in the chat. Well, I can do this by myself. I still have a great team with James Head as co-MC, and then myself as co-MC with James, and then we have Claudia Leong, who is our Director of Programs as our moderator, and Mari Amadiwa to help support with tech, and Stephanie G supporting us with access and chat. So if you have any type of access needs, please reach out to us, Stephanie, and let us know how we can support you. And also, I would love to get to know everyone, and other people would like to get to know you too. And so since we do have a short amount of time, I would love for all of you to share in the chat your name, pronouns, and your organization, location, or any access need, like I said earlier, that you need to share with the group to make sure that you're comfortable and that you're okay. And so, yeah, and then the other thing I want to share is, as we're looking at some of the facilitation requests, was just encourage everyone to be present and minimize distractions. most importantly, like take care of yourselves, your needs, and then participate and share space, honor people's experiences, and then support collective access. If you have anything else that you want to recommend, please just share it in the chat. And again, my name is Eddie Zhang. I'm the founder and president of the New Breath Foundation. My pronoun is he, him, and my access need has been met. And I'm very excited to invite James to help us to set the stage and kind of ground us for a minute or two.
Thank you, Eddie. And my pronouns are also he and him. And I also want to say that I come to you from Oakland, California, which is Ohlone land, and want to acknowledge that. So I thought we would just take a moment for each of us to get in the right frame of mind for what I think will be some exciting news and sharing that you will hear. So I'd like for you just to take a moment and to just breathe and listen to yourself breathe. So just take 2 to 3 breaths, exhale and inhale and exhale, and just ground yourself to make sure that your frame of mind is right, to make sure that you feel the living things around you, to make sure that you can feel how you breathe and how that really makes your body and your mind feel. In many instances, I'm always aware whenever I am with Eddie, he always starts with this idea of taking a breath, and this idea that each breath actually is a new breath. So take a couple of more breaths and just think about what's important to you, what's important family-wise, what's important work-wise, and how that is connected to both how you breathe, and how you breathe is connected to how your body feels. And with that, I will now turn it back over to Eddie, who will share some updates about the New Breath Foundation and the We Got Us Fund. And as you listen, please ask any questions that you have. If you could put them in the chat, we will try to identify them there. We won't answer the questions until a little bit later, but we'll keep track of them. So I hope that if you have questions, you can just record them in the track and someone will keep track, will identify those at the time that we will have a chance to have interactions with you related to questions and answers. So Eddie?
Thank you, James. Yeah, I just want to briefly go to the journey of the New Breath Foundation. As you kind of review our mission and the vision, what we're really trying to do is just to center the people who are directly impacted, especially the people who are impacted by mass incarceration, deportation that associated with violence. And we want to be able to create a seat at the table, and then also create access, right, to support the marginalized and HPI communities. So the way that we focus on our work in our grant making, the 3 pillars that we're really focusing on is hope and healing, keeping families together, as well as movement building. That is very important to us because as a directly impacted individual and the people that I have engaged in, we often find ourselves not having the representation we needed and the resources that we needed to address some of the systemic racism and white supremacy practices that not only impact Black, Indigenous and Brown Mensa communities, but also with the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities. And as we look at the timeline, we thought about incorporating the New Bread Foundation at the end of 2016. And as you see, some of the years that we went by, in 2017, 18, 19, and you can see how some of our infrastructure and capacity has grown as a result of all the support from many of our funding partners and individual donors. And as we move forward to, in the 2020 all the way to 2022, you can also see some of the progress that we have made, as a foundation, right? And so the key aspect of the way that we're looking at this growth period, we can see that it's never something that we do by ourselves. It's really rooted in our community and the way how we engage our community that allow us the opportunity to be able to sustain ourselves and continue to build up this infrastructure. We hear a lot about trust-based philanthropy, as a way we engage the people that we ask to receive our resources so they can better do their work. And so for us, we resonate with what is trust philanthropy. But for us, it's really like centering the directly impacted leadership. We having earned the experience and then the credibility, by working in the nonprofit and then also in the philanthropy sectors. And most important, being organizing on the streets and to be able to build a relationship and nurture trust. We learned that the trust-based philanthropy is also about minimizing barriers so people have access to those type of resources, and then really focusing on supporting the most vulnerable populations in our community. And so that's how we approach trust-based philanthropy. And so looking at the We Got Us Fund that James, as part of the East Bay Community Foundation and many other partners helped supported us to create, we really wanted to focusing on cultivating and distributing significant amount of dollars to support many of the grassroots organizations, and with the focus on building power, infrastructure, and then also some capacity within many of those organizations who are doing work in the front lines. And so, as you can see, the We Got Us Fund focusing on those areas when we first initially launched the fund. And the outcome that we want to achieve is definitely, for what we prioritize within the We Got Us Fund, but that's not exclusively, just in centering around those outcomes only, right? And so as we look at how we intentionally resource and focusing on that, and we can see what we have done, since we launched this fund. As you see in this graph right here, we look at the funds granted by the New Bread Foundation. When we first started out, you can see how we started from, only sharing, some very small resources in 2018 versus what we're able to distribute in 2021, especially after the launch of the We Got Us Fund. We can it demonstrates to us that the resources are out there. It's just a matter of whether people understanding the need. And when we're looking at why we start New Bread Foundation and how the We Got Us Fund is a demonstration of how, when philanthropy partners or philanthropy as a whole wanting to learn and invest in this, we can address the inequity of the 20 cents out of $100 that is being distributed to the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander community, right? And then when we're looking at that too, we also want to look at how much of that 20 cents is actually allocated in supporting organizations or communities who are doing the work to address mass incarceration, deportation, and violence in that perspective. So I find myself to be humbled by this number right here, just because I know it is because of the investment from individuals and philanthropic partners that we have that allow us the opportunity to be in this space, in this share space at this table. And then so when we look at just off the, in 2022, what we anticipate is, to distribute $1.4 million, right, to some of the 7 organizations that we have invited to apply, and then 130K of them go towards capacity building and convening support, because now we do have, the first cohort that we got us fund, which is 10 organizations. Now we're going to have a second cohort that we got us fund with the 7 organizations. We would love to be able to have the opportunity to convene them and then continue to support their needs, and then engage them with the many of the funders, right, who has invested in us. And so we can also see we will be able to provide some discretionary fundings this year also, and hopefully we're able to distribute 1.5 million this year, and that's what we anticipated to do. Yeah, and then we'll see how we're able to move this forward to 2023. With that, I'll pass it over to James to talk a little bit more about why we are able to survive and grow in this new space of philanthropy.
Thank you, Eddie. And each time I hear you in the presentation, it gives me a greater level of appreciation for the work and the commitment that you and the staff at the New Breath Foundation have to do this work. So congratulations on what you do for the community. And as we all know, we can't do this work without partners. And we have a significant number of partners who have joined us in the We Got Us Fund, as well as in the work that the New Breath Foundation does. And we would now like to hear from some of those funding partners about why they support the We Got Us Fund and what it means to them as part of their philanthropic missions. So I'd like to first introduce Dura Thar, who is with the Sobrano Foundation, who will share some thoughts. Dura?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see some familiar faces, and hello to Eddie and the team. I think most of you have had a chance to just get up to speed on some of the funders, but I'm Dura Thar and I'm with the Sobrano Philanthropies. And for those, just a little bit of background, we're based in the South Bay. For almost 2 decades, we were solely focused on giving only in Silicon Valley. And then in the last number of years have expanded our work to support work statewide around education and policy, as well as now we're investing in climate change and things like that. So super excited. Just quickly, I'll just say very briefly why we're investing in New Breath. We, like a lot of the foundations that started this work the last couple of years, recognize like we have a role and a responsibility around race and equity in this country. And though it's new to our foundations, we were super interested in trying to engage and start some pilot investments to support orgs and funds throughout the country. So this is in coordination with our giving to the California Black Freedom Fund, Democracy Frontlines, a number of these funds that we've been investing in to really try to support and learn about investing in communities of color. We're not traditionally an entity that has done that work for a long time. And most of my background has been in the API community and our work both in DC as well as working with community groups here. And so it was pretty important for us to invest in a partner that had deep experience with grassroots partners on the ground. And for those of you who know Eddie and the team, they've been longtime allies and partners, both doing the work themselves and reaching out to some of the most unseen communities, even within the API community. So we were really interested in partnering with a group that had strong partnerships already, who cared deeply about investing in the capacity of those groups too. So it's not just funds to engage in the work, but it's funds to help grow the organizations to be more thoughtful about where they want to be sitting in this work alongside other communities of color at this moment. And then Eddie's and his team's deep connection to working across communities of color. He's been doing that for a long time and is very vocal about that, especially in the criminal justice field. So that felt like a good entry point for a new foundation who is really trying to learn more and trying to be as close as we can to those with the least amount of access to institutions like us. So, happy to speak more, but I'm going to let the other funders say a little bit more, and then I'm sure we can do Q&A later.
Thank you, Dora. And again, thank you so much for the partnership and for your work in these communities. Next is Sandra Witt, who is with the California Endowment. Sandra?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, James. It's really, really great to be here. Sandra Witt, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the managing director of the statewide power infrastructure at the California Endowment. And I want to talk about this fund within the broader context of our power building goal. So we have a fairly ambitious goal of by 2030, California has a strong intergenerational power building ecosystem that advances health and racial justice to create a California for all, where everyone belongs and no one is left behind. And core to this is really centering and addressing structural and systemic racism and promoting a community vision for systems transformation. Deep investment in community organizing of the people that are most impacted, growing intergenerational, intersectional movements that support leadership in healing, and expanding the capacity to create new narratives that reflect the experiences of and are voiced by people that are most impacted by injustice, recognizes our shared humanity, and moves our society to take collective responsibility for health and justice for all. And this work really centers around doing systems transformation around 4 systems: our health system, our justice reinvestment, education justice, and inclusive community development. And so for us to be able to really reach this goal, we're committed to centering and supporting Black, Indigenous, AAPI, and other BIPOC communities, particularly those communities that are more marginalized and under-resourced. And we're committed to solidarity building across race and other differences, grounded in a structural analysis to ensure that we actually do address the root causes that are harming our communities. So we're excited about the We Got Us Fund because the outcomes completely align with what we see as sort of our long-term work of building power for systems transformation. And I would just say that the need to support AAPI grassroots organizing groups who are already doing the hard work of healing and cross-racial solidarity and building the capacity of others to do this work is so critical right now, given both the rise in Asian hate, but also the subsequent narrative backlash that pits communities against each other, that continues to further polarize and divide. We see this almost every day. So we're excited about this opportunity. We see this as part of a broader move to build power building for racial justice and health equity. And we're excited to be here with you all today.
Thank you, Sandra. And again, also we want to really thank you for the partnership and the work that you do and that the California Endowment does around these issues. And then lastly, we will hear from Angie John, who is with the Heising Simon Foundation. Angie?
Thank you, James. I'm with the Heising Simons Foundation, the Human Rights Program. As you saw, the mission and vision for New Breath Foundation, I would say, is almost identical to our Human Rights Program mission and vision. So good job, Eddie. We have a little bit of a broader focus. It's not just API communities, it's BIPOC communities, and what better vehicle to have people that are directly impacted on these issues to lead philanthropic efforts to resource the field. And I'll just say a little bit more of like what we've been trying to do and embody in our program is that we really want to tackle intersectionality in the context of criminalization. And that means resourcing people that are directly impacted by these issues and systems of punishment like the criminal, legal, and immigration enforcement systems. So CrimIm is one of the areas that we do focus on. And we recognize criminalization does not operate in a silo. It overlaps with race, class, gender, and immigration status to compound its harmful effects, resulting in incarceration, deportation, family separation, and trauma. And we believe that We Got Us Fund and New Breath Foundation embodies that intersectionality and our way to live those values. And it's not only because of the representation of the people within this fund, whether they're undocumented, documented, or have been directly impacted by Crim-Im and these systems of punishment, but they are people leading in their communities to really address intergenerational cycles of harm. They're finding solutions to end it, to heal it, and reimagine other possibilities. And so we love the fact that this takes a people and not just an issue lens. We feel like this is really important to adequately and holistically address the injustices in our country. And if we don't fund in this way, we think that us as funders would continue to perpetuate the harm, to not see things more as a people issue, not just a single issue. And I think I'll finally just say about the importance of equity, this fund really does embody racial equity. If we want to level the playing field, we do need to resource some of the smallest groups that have been left from the traditional philanthropic tables, and we need to give that power to people directly impacted by them to resource these groups and to give these groups a chance to build their capacity and to grow. So thank you for everything you all do at We Got Us, and we're glad to be part of this partnership.
Thank you, Angie. And again, also, thank you so much for the partnership and for the work that the Heisman-Simons Foundation is doing. The New Breath Foundation also would like to acknowledge the generous support of all of our funding partners who were listed here. We would have had everybody speak, but it then would have been about a 4-hour session. And so we really appreciate those who are listed and the great work that you do in partnership with the New Breath Foundation and the We Got Us Fund. Now I would like to turn the agenda over to Claudia Leong, who's going to facilitate the sharing of some insights and learnings from our 2021 We Got Us Fund grantees. Claudia?
Thanks so much, James, and thank you again to our funding partners who make this incredible work possible. So we're going to speak to some of the grantees to hear more about the impact of the first year of the We Got Us Fund. And as you listen, I'll just ask that if you have any questions, please ask them in the chat, or you can share any observations or comments you have there as well. We won't be answering them until later, but we'll keep track of them. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce 3 of our amazing grantees. First, we're going to be speaking with Nikki Chan from EMAC, or Empowering Marginalized Asian Communities. You can read a little bit about Nikki and the work of EMAC here, and I'll just share a fun fact about each of our grantee partners that are going to be joining us today. Nikki's fun fact is that she is one of 36 in her generation, in her family. So broad family, we love to see it. We'll also be speaking with Roxana Mun from GAR, our Grassroots Asians Rising. And Roxana is the national co-director, and actually all of our grantees speaking today are co-directors of their respective organizations. Roxana's fun fact is that she's been learning more how to cook with fish sauce and appreciating all of the amazing things you can do with fish sauce to add flavor and depth to food, which is not a part of the cuisine that she is typically used to. And then last but not least, we'll also be speaking with Billy Tang, who is with API Rise, and they're based in LA. And Billy likes to go on hiking trails that lead to waterfalls, which I was very surprised to hear there are many of in SoCal. So I'd like to welcome up our grantees, and we'll have a short conversation about some of the amazing work that they're doing. Welcome, everyone. So now that you've been introduced, I'd love to hear from each of you. If you could just share from an organization perspective, what's one highlight or success that you've had over the last year? And we'll start with Roxana, since you're unmuted.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. I mean, one highlight for us has been that we now have 2 full-time national co-directors at GAR. Up until last year, GAR, despite being around for 15 years or so, we never really had any staff to like support this work, and we had a quarter-time volunteer up until like last year, and it wasn't sustainable for us. So now that we have 2 national co-directors that are full-time as of the beginning of this year, it's allowed our membership to grow from 7 core members to 25 new members in our organization that are from all over in the West Coast, Midwest, South, and East Coast, and much more representative of the different intersections of our Pan-Asian communities and like areas of work. And it's also allowed us to like create a 5-year strategy for GAR and its future to give us more clarity on the kind of work and strategy that we want to pursue. It's allowed us to have like more regular programming just within the past year. So like a lot of that is attributed to the fact that we have actual full-time staff dedicated to this work now.
Thanks, Roxana. How about you, Nikki? What's one highlight of success?
One highlight that we had this year was a new program that we were able to start, a formerly incarcerated program. We titled it our 209 Homie Circle. So this is a formerly incarcerated leadership fellowship program that we were able to train 8 local Stockton, Asian, and Pacific Islander men in leadership skills, organizing skills, things that they weren't able to gain while they were in school or while they were incarcerated. So after being connected with them, they were able to go through our 12-week program. We threw them a huge graduation ceremony at the end of it. Through the program, the men were able to learn from each other and with each other and with our facilitators. The ranges aged from 15 to about over 40-year-old participants. So we were able to establish like a very intergenerational healing. Folks were able to learn from the young people. Folks were able to learn from people who are older than them to kind of decide, to kind of help them really guide their path now that they're back home. A lot of their folks were either formerly incarcerated. Young folks have been just as impacted. After the graduation program, they were able to gain more resources. We had our local community college come speak, our local workforce job force development were able to come speak about the resources that they could offer them as somebody who has been formerly incarcerated. So we're still able to connect with them and keep in touch with them. And now, after going through this program, we are going to work collaboratively with them for our first API formerly incarcerated conference in the Central Valley in Stockton.
Thanks, Nikki. How about you, Billy? What's one success from your past year?
Oh, there's many success, but I'll highlight one. Beginning of this year, we were able to staff our volunteers. API was, been funded since 2014, but up until January, I was hired as a co-director. I myself am formerly incarcerated, been impacted by the immigration system also. So to think like 7 years ago while sitting in cell, I would never thought that I would be a co-director for API Rise. Here I am. And in addition to me, I think like a month ago, we were able to hire two new staff, also reentry specialists. And both of them are formerly incarcerated. One was serving life without the possibility that came out 3 months ago. And another person was been out 7 years. So we have, we have staff from 2 different perspectives, right? One that just recently got, one that's been out. And our aim is to reach individuals that are, just hitting the prison system and walk with them all the way till the reentry. And from reentry, we'll have programs and to aid them in the successful reentry. So thank you.
Thank you. We love to see it. It's amazing to hear just the ways that your programs have all grown in the last year. And, we could take a little credit for that, right? And New Breath Foundation, We Got Us Fund, you are all recipients of our 2021 first round of grants. And we would just love to know from you all, how has the We Got Us Fund supported your work? And we'll start with Nikki this time.
So one thing that we really loved and really enjoyed working with New Breath is, I think we talked about it earlier in the presentation, was just really this trust-based philanthropy. And I think this is just this new upcoming thing that some funders are switching over to, is being able to trust organizations to do what they need to do for their community. So through EMAC, we were able to hire 2 co-directors. We also have a two co-director foundation. So we were able to hire two of us since last December. For the last 5 years, it's really been a volunteer run. A lot of our members have just worked after 5. We've worked during our day jobs. Just really doing this because we know our community needs this. But with New Breath, we were able to get us on, and being able to not have any deliverables, any restrictions, any monthly reporting. So being able to just be able to say, hey, here's some funding to help support you guys to take on your work, and we trust you to do it. And we've been able to transform our community, bring in new resources to our folks. So I think that's just been really how New Breath and the We Got Us Fund has supported us, and being able to trust us, and really looking at this relationship with organization and funders, and continue to build on that too.
Thank you, Nikki. We love to hear that. Yeah, Billy, how about you guys?
Through We Got Us Fund, New Breath Foundation, we decided that in our reentry programs, we want to cater our program towards trauma-informed, culturally sensitive. So we hired a consultant. She's LCSW licensed, and we want to create a program where more towards like the API cultures, right? Dealing with traumas, there's like the challenge of language barrier that other reentry housing that don't offer cultural understanding. And we want to, walk with individual when they're coming out, right? And walk along with them instead of like ask them what they want to do instead of like telling them what they want to do. A lot of individuals are so, I guess, used to paperwork, and then, not having people even follow up through it. So, we want to be intentionally walk with individual as they're transitioning, and make sure that they have a successful transition into. And a lot of the individual we care for our individuals that have lengthy sentences, been decades of incarceration. So that's a trauma that we want to address also. So thank you.
Glad to support that work. Roxana, what about for GAR?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as a national alliance that is centered around like building alignment around strategy for our working class grassroots organizing groups, it's very hard to find multi-year grants, and getting the security of like receiving multi-year grants and like just having that be secure enough allows us to be able to focus on our membership, being able to build our membership, being able to do the deeper relationship building with our member groups, to do the deeper listening around like what are the supports that's needed, what are the peer learning spaces that we want to be able to create for them, what are the best ways to like facilitate relationships between organizing groups and our membership. And we would have a really difficult time being able to do that in such a short amount of time within a year of building our capacity if we didn't have the security of like multi-year grants, and particularly because we're a strategy alliance, right, which often do not get a lot of like resources and not as often to like multi-year grants. So that security is a really big deal in building our capacity and like sustaining us in our work.
Well, we're really proud to do what we can to make this work, more sustainable and easier for all of you. And New Breath Foundation is not the only funder that is in the Zoom room right now. So I think our last question for this grantee panel would just be, what's the most important thing that you want to share with this group of funders? And I'll start with you, Billy.
First of all, just thank you, Eddie Zhang, New Breath, and all the funders here. Really, the funds like Nikki and Roxanne was mentioning, the unrestricted fund allows us to have flexibility, right? And although we focus on like former incarcerated, immigration, deportation, we want to also build solidarity building. And last year we had a youth program that bring 7 API youth and 7 Black youth together to do like a mural paintings. And it was a picture of Earth, and it has the word solidarity. So we want to engage more of like solidarity building and communities. We are partnered with another organization called Healing Urban Barrios, and that's to address gang preventions and violence prevention. So yeah, in addition to just the work, I know we're entry organization, but we're also very intentional about building solidarity, doing the work of like building solidarity. So yeah, with y'all grant and y'all kindness allow us to do that kind of work also. So thank you so much.
You're really welcome. How about you, Roxana?
Yeah, I think it's really two things, right? Like there is a need to really center working class communities within MEMSA communities, East Asian and Southeast Asian communities, around how working class people's experiences around violence interpersonally and structurally is often erased. That's not often the narrative when people think about like a violence against Asians, or like what it is to build a broader Pan-Asian identity. The working class and class identity of that is often decentered. And it's really important because that is a side of our community that is facing the brunt of the worst forms of violence with the least amount of resources. And the resources that they are able to access are often through organizing spaces, local grassroots organizing spaces. And in comparison to other BIPOC communities with their power building infrastructure and like grassroots organizing networks, Pan-Asian communities across the board in comparison have far less number of grassroots organizing groups that are membership led by directly impacted people. So the need to build that within like working class Pan-Asian communities is very urgent. And it goes to a second point, tied to my second point around that lack of investment has created a vacuum that is being filled by more right-wing conservative Asian forces in our communities that are able to influence other working class Pan-Asian communities in being able to choose positions and things that are often against our own interest and our collective interest. And the only counter to that is more sustainable, well-structured, funded grassroots organizing groups of working class Pan-Asian communities.
That's so true, Roxana. And with that, we'll just end with Nikki's thoughts for the funders in the room.
So one thing I want to leave with all you today is, so Stockton is a very special city. So one thing we've really, are witnessing is how the Central Valley is just very largely underfunded. It's not really looked at to some folks, when they think of California, a lot of people either think, maybe Sacramento, LA, up to San Francisco. And, Central Valley is vast from Stockton up until Bakersfield. So with that idea is that we are a lot of look past by, like we're not paid attention to, or we fall down in the cracks a lot. So that's really been one of the biggest things at philanthropy. There's just a huge gap here in the Valley, and having eyes and partnerships with New Breath has been great. But what we really want to talk about, I saw that there's a lot of Bay Area folks on this call today, is a lot of folks from the Bay Area are getting pushed back. They're getting pushed into the Valley. They're getting pushed into Stockton, Lathrop, and community. And I don't think people think that Stockton itself, we're closer to Oakland than we are Fresno. And, we're still considered Central Valley, but, it takes me longer to drive to Fresno than it does to Oakland. So, and I think that's what funders are praying. A lot of funders, should start to think that, all these folks who are getting pushed out the Bay are coming towards, Stockton and this kind of area. So really keep an eye on that, especially with the pandemic and a lot of folks getting pushed out and moving, is really keeping an eye on the Central Valley, because we're bringing a lot of people in, and we also want folks to keep comfortable, make sure the people who've been here are also getting their resources, and people who are moving or migrating here are also getting their resources too. And the organizations that are set here are equipped and trained and skilled to do these things to help them.
Thank you so much, Nikki, and Billy and Roxana, for taking your time to just share a bit with our room full of funders, some of the things that they should be thinking about and considering when they're building their strategies. And with that, we are going to just share a little bit more about our upcoming grantees and some of the impacts that we've had nationwide. With this first round of grantees that the 3 speakers you just heard from were a part of, we had 10 organizations we were able to fund nationally, with the concentration in California, in the Bay Area. We're also about to be announcing our 2022 We Got Us Fund grantees in just a few weeks. So please stay tuned. Make sure you're signed up for our mailing list if you're not already on there. It's on our website. We're really looking forward to sharing with you who those groups will be. And this is just a map showing you on a kind of visual level where we've had our impacts. Again, this is a national organization, and we do still focus in California, and just a growing network of organizations that working on similar issues and are also cross issue, since this is about building a movement and making sure that our folks on the front lines, like everyone you just heard from, are learning from each other and sharing as they grow and develop really powerful programs, strategies, and leadership pipelines. So thank you so much, all of our speakers, and I'll turn it back over to you, James. Thank you, Claudia.
And again, also thank you, Nikki, Roxana, and Billy, for the great work that you're doing. It's always great to hear from those who are in the field doing this work, and to be able to support that work and support you as leaders in the community. So we're headed towards the end of the hour. We have a couple more things that we want to do, one of which is to do a little bit of questions and answers. And so Eddie, I'd like to maybe sort of do that with you. I pulled one, at least the question that I think surfaced from the audience was related to your comments earlier about the 20 cents of funding that was going nationally to AAPI groups or organizations. And the question, I think, was, do we have a sense or any information as to what that looks like in the Bay Area?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, James, and the folks who are kind of thinking about that, is that we don't really have more like a comprehensive disaggregated data on some of those distribution of resources from the institution of philanthropy, right? So we were grateful to even have Asian American Pacific Philanthropy to be able to create that report. I think they have another report they're going to come out, since their big convening, in Seattle a month and a half ago, is to hopefully we get more data on some of the breakdowns, but we don't have any sense of how the Bay Area specifically, or even Northern California, in that distribution of resources. But I know for a fact that as we're looking for the data on how much money is being distributed for the Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native Hawaiians who are impacted by mass incarceration and deportation that relates to violence, I think that is the data we don't have for sure, right? So how many pennies out of that 20 cents that we are actually getting for that support?
Great, thank you. And I do want to acknowledge that Pat Ng, who is the president and CEO of APIP, is in the room, and I want to acknowledge Pat, and especially because I am a proud board member of APIP. So So that's a project maybe that we can think about doing together in terms of some work here in the Bay Area or in California in particular. And then secondly, how can the field of philanthropy support this important work? What's your sense of what's needed now?
Well, I mean, I think one is that we look at when we launched the We Got Us Fund, is specifically focusing on how do we build more power and capacity infrastructure for grassroots organizations who are working on the front line. But not only address the anti-Asian violence, but then in general, address the inequity, right, in distribution of resources within that community. But I think what we're forgetting too is that as we want more investments, why philanthropic should invest in New Breath Foundation and other organizations like the New Breath Foundation, is that how do we look at, we're not a monolith as a community, and the same goes with the Black and Brown and Indigenous community, right? And so how do we look at, when we look at inequity, and how do we look at how do we not get pitted against each other? How do we have a scarcity mentality when it comes to supporting the work in the BIPOC community and the Mensa community? And then how do we really try to move beyond what the law requires, the private philanthropy to give, which is, the minimum of 5%, right? How do we move beyond those? And so that has to do with really listening and learning from the field, right? And then also to build that relationship and trust for supporting the work with the people in the community. And then how do we stay connected with the not just a very transactional relationship, instead how do we stay connected to the community and people to do the work? And as advocates, I think philanthropy has to, really introduce the work of, what we are doing, and then encourage other partners to be able to invest in us, right? And I think lastly, that I have many different points, but then lastly, I feel like reimagining what philanthropy can do, like what Angie said earlier, to not perpetuate harm, but really trying to change the whole landscape of how do we decolonize wealth, right? And put it back into the people that were traditional, historically being harmed, due to systemic racism and white supremacy.
Great. So my good friend Mei Liang had a question in the chat about what you're seeing on the ground from nonprofits who are serving the AAPI community. I actually would like to wrap that question up into this next slide that we have, which is, where the fund goes from here and what we are seeking to do, because I think that they're very much related in terms of the commitment and doubling down. And Eddie, you can maybe speak to this really quickly. The context I would give is that when Eddie and I started these conversations and began this work, he made me agree that we would raise $10 million. And if you know Eddie, he can be very convincing. And so I very quickly indicated that I would be a part of however that could happen, regardless to what my status might be going forward in the future. And he also indicated that, as he said earlier, that there are more than just the hate issues that we are trying to address, and the victims who need assistance and need support as a result of the hate issues, but there are incarceration issues, there are employment issues, there are a range of issues that are out there. And again, what I would say, especially May, to you, is that as I began to look at this, I was really, really encouraged by the breadth of organizations who were out there doing this work. And you heard from three of them, but that the exciting work that they're doing to really support our community. And so there's a pitch here that I would like to make to my funder colleagues who are on the call, and to donors who I think would be a great place to find the ability for partnerships here. And that is that, this is a community of support now for this effort that is much more broader than just the AAPI community. And we want to continue to raise the resources to meet the goal. And so if you are interested in assisting us in doing that, and or in renewing commitments that you've made, if you would reach out to Eddie and myself, we would want to really join you in a one-on-one conversation to share and to identify how that could happen. But Eddie, let me turn it over to you to see what you would add to that.
Yeah, I mean, if we could go to the next slide quickly, you can see that, James mentioned we raised about 3.5 million. I think we raised about like $4 million, reaching that $10 million goal, right? So, part of this recommitting and doubling down is that I want to be able for us to reach our goal of $10 million by the end of next year. So we can continue to resource many of the grassroots organizations that will historically be marginalized. And then, so how do we also understanding the work, when we're talking about not only look at in a way that what is in the media, right? Because behind the media, anti-Blackness is still happening. And the harm of taking away women's reproductive rights, all those are still happening. Climate change, you name it, all this attack is still happening behind the scenes, whether it's bleeding in the news or not. I mean, I think that's what is important in that space. And so when we talk about resourcing folks, we want to be able to look at how do we stick with, what we can do, because we know we can fund everybody. But then we want to be able to use this opportunity to really to build with people and nurture the trust that we really needed for healing and for liberation, right? And I think that's what I want to share with that, because I can talk for another hour and to really go deep into it. But I do want to say that we're coming up to the hour, and I'm very grateful again to you, James, for your support. I mean, we all need each other in this space, and that's why we use the slogan "We Got Us," right? Because the "We Got Us" came from the community, right? And so we want to continue to build together. So today, as you leave this space right here, I want to say that we appreciate you. We appreciate everyone's partnership in this, our funding partners, our individual donors, especially the people who's doing the difficult work on the grounds. And I want to thank my team at the New Bread Foundation, with Mari, Claudia, and Stephanie. And then when you leave, I want to ask you, from your heart, how am I feeling? As James grounded us at the beginning. And then with our head, it's like, what am I thinking about? What am I going to do about it, right? What am I doing? And on the feet, it's like, what this community has taken us, and where am I going? How do we go together on this journey? And so I'll leave it to you, James, since you started off, and see if you have any reflection to share so we can close out.
I don't. I think that the heart, head, and feet is a great analogy to close out on. I also would like to thank everybody for participating, and we look forward to your ongoing involvement, and reach out to us to let us know what you'd like to do and how you'd like to be involved and what questions we can answer. And also, if you have friends and colleagues who would have an interest in this, just make sure that they know, and we will have this recording available if you'd like to share that with them. So with that, we'd like to thank everybody for the time, and we are really encouraged by your presence. So I think that we are concluded. Bye-bye.
Thank you, James. Thank you, everyone.